There is a hole in the middle of a desert that has been burning for more than half a century. No volcano feeds it. No lightning keeps reigniting it. The fuel comes from beneath the earth. And according to the story repeated for decades, humans deliberately started the fire because they believed it would burn for only a few weeks. Instead, it outlived the Soviet Union. It survived presidents. It became a tourist attraction. Scientists eventually climbed inside it and found life. And now, more than 50 years later, satellite observations suggest something extraordinary. The door to hell may finally be dying. But there's a problem with the story. You've probably heard about this place. We aren't even completely certain how the fire started, and that makes what happened here much stranger. To understand Darvaza, you first need to understand where it sits. The Karakum Desert covers most of Turkmenistan. From above, it looks almost empty. Sand, scrub, heat, and enormous stretches of seemingly useless land. But underneath it lies something extraordinarily valuable: natural gas. Turkmenistan possesses some of the world's largest proven natural gas reserves. And during the Soviet era, finding those reserves mattered enormously. Gas wasn't simply fuel. It meant industry, exports, political leverage, energy security, so Soviet geological teams drilled throughout the region searching for deposits. And somewhere around Darvaza, something went wrong. The version repeated across the internet goes something like this. In 1971, Soviet geologists drilled into an underground natural gas cavern. The ground beneath their equipment collapsed. A crater opened, gas began escaping. The engineers feared uncontrolled methane leaking into the surrounding area, so they chose what appeared to be the simplest solution: burn it. Set the gas alight and allow the reservoir to exhaust itself. The expectation? Days, perhaps weeks. Instead, the flames were still burning more than 50 years later. It's a perfect story. There's just one problem. We don't actually know whether that's exactly what happened. When National Geographic explorer George Karounis investigated Darvaza, local Turkmen geologists gave him a different account. They suggested the collapse may have happened during the 1960s, and that the crater might not have been ignited until the 1980s. Karounis and his team looked for old documentation. They couldn't find contemporary incident reports that settled the question. Think about that. One of the strangest industrial accidents on Earth may have been burning for decades, and we cannot confidently tell you the year somebody struck the match. The Soviet Union wasn't famous for publicly documenting every industrial accident, so the origin of Darvaza sits somewhere between geology, Soviet secrecy, and decades of retelling. What isn't disputed is what came next. The crater burned, and burned, and burned. Before we go deeper, I want to say something quickly. I can see many of you watching these historical mysteries, and I genuinely appreciate every one of you. But only a small percentage have subscribed to SreeUnplugged. If you enjoy stories where history, science, and mystery collide, please subscribe, like the video, and tell me in the comments what you want me to investigate next. Because Darvaza gets much stranger from here. A gas flare isn't unusual. Oil and gas operations deliberately burn unwanted gas all over the world. What made Darvaza extraordinary was duration. The crater is roughly 70 meters across and around 30 meters deep. And rather than exhausting one tiny isolated pocket of gas, fractures beneath the crater continued, allowing combustible gas to reach the surface. Imagine lighting one burner on a stove. Now imagine discovering that the burner isn't connected to a small tank, but to an enormous underground network continuously replenishing the fuel. As long as gas reaches oxygen and encounters flame, combustion continues, day after day, year after year. Eventually, the accident became part of the geography. At night, the desert horizon glowed orange. Travelers could see the light before reaching the crater. The place acquired the name that would make it famous around the world: the door to hell. For decades, almost everyone experienced Darvaza from the rim. That changed in 2013. Explorer George Kourounis prepared to do something nobody had been documented doing before. He was going inside. He wore a heat-resistant suit. A climbing team secured him with ropes. Then, he descended past walls surrounded by fire. Imagine hanging inside a crater where flames are erupting from the ground beneath you. Kourounis later described the environment as overwhelmingly orange. But he wasn't there simply for the spectacle. He wanted soil. Because scientists had a remarkable question. Could anything live down there? Samples collected during the expedition revealed microorganisms capable of surviving the crater's extreme environment. Think about the irony. Humans looked into this burning hole and named it after hell. Life looked at the same environment and adapted. These organisms are valuable because extremophiles help scientists understand where the boundaries of life actually lie. If microorganisms can survive environments that appear completely hostile on Earth, researchers can broaden the types of environments considered potentially habitable elsewhere. Suddenly, Darvaza wasn't merely an industrial accident, it was an accidental laboratory, a place created through human activity that could help scientists ask one of humanity's oldest questions: how difficult is life to destroy? While scientists were finding life inside the crater, Turkmenistan's government increasingly had another problem. Money was literally burning into the atmosphere. Natural gas is one of Turkmenistan's most valuable resources. Every flame inside Darvaza represents hydrocarbons being burned rather than captured and sold. There are environmental consequences as well. So eventually, the government began publicly discussing extinguishing the crater. That sounds simple. Put out the fire. Except extinguishing the visible flames doesn't necessarily solve the problem. If gas continues escaping after the flames disappear, methane can vent directly into the atmosphere, and methane is a particularly potent greenhouse gas, so engineers don't merely need to extinguish Darvaza, they need to control what is feeding it. That distinction changes everything. Imagine trying to extinguish a candle. Easy. Now imagine the candle is sitting on top of a network of cracks, continuously delivering fuel from underground. Cover one opening. Gas may find another. Flood the crater. You still haven't necessarily isolated the reservoir. The real solution is less dramatic. Reduce the gas pressure. Capture the gas elsewhere. Starve the flames. And eventually, that appears to be exactly what started working. In 2025, something remarkable was announced. Monitoring showed that the intensity of combustion at Darvaza had fallen dramatically. Independent satellite measurements supported a major decline. Nearby wells were being used to capture gas that otherwise could migrate toward the crater, and photographs began showing something visitors hadn't seen for decades. Darkness. Not complete darkness, but sections of the crater that once appeared engulfed in flame were no longer burning with anything close to their former intensity. The inferno was shrinking. Recent visitors have described only scattered tongues of flame where enormous sheets of fire once dominated the crater. After decades of promises, humans may finally be starving the door to hell, not by defeating the fire, by taking away its food. And that brings us back to 1971, or perhaps the 1960s, or perhaps the 1980s, because the most famous part of this story may also be the least certain. We know the crater exists. We know natural gas has burned there for decades. We know Soviet-era drilling took place in this region. But the neat story where engineers accidentally collapsed the ground in 1971, deliberately ignited the gas, and confidently predicted that it would disappear within weeks, that story is much harder to prove than the internet makes it sound. And somehow, that makes Darvaza even more fascinating. Humans created, or at minimum helped create, one of the most recognizable industrial landscapes on Earth. Then, the documentation became so fragmented that the accident turned into legend while the flames were still burning. For more than half a century, Darvaza has been photographed as a portal to another world. but perhaps we've been looking at it backwards. The remarkable thing isn't that the fire lasted 50 years, it's that a temporary human intervention became permanent enough for an entire generation to accept it as part of the landscape. Governments changed, the Soviet Union disappeared, technology advanced, satellites began watching from orbit, and the fire remained. Until now. Because after decades of burning, the door to hell finally appears to be weakening. One day, perhaps soon, the final flame may disappear, and when it does, the desert will become dark again, but the crater will remain, a 70-meter scar reminding us that sometimes the longest-lasting monuments humans create are the ones we never intended to build. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to SreeUnplugged, and tell me below, if the door to hell finally goes dark, should Turkmenistan preserve the crater as a historical site, or erase the last traces of the accident completely? Because the next story we're exploring involves another fiery one.